In this video, let's discuss the 4 use cases of SD WAN Gateway. So the first use case is if we have to connect our SD WAN site to Azure over the Azure Express route, which is connected on the MPLS. Second is, let's say we are undergoing a migration from Cisco to SD WAN, and we want to ensure that the connectivity is there and it has to be managed by the provider. So the routing has to be managed by the provider. Third case is, let's say we have some UCC services that are there on the MPLS underlay. Fourth use case is, let's say we have 2 SD WAN sites, but they are on different underlay. One is on MPLS and one is on internet. How does that work? Let's take first 3 in this section and let's see how we can connect the Azure and Legacy Cisco and UCC into the SD WAN. So in this example, I have this setup. Let's say I have 3 sites on the MPLS underlay. They are connected in the transport VR to the MPLS, and control VR is making its own MPBGP session with the controller. Let's say if I have any site on Cisco and it's on Cisco MPLS VPN. So since this site is already on Cisco and these SD WAN sites have their connectivity in transport via to Cisco, they should be able to communicate to each other by default, right? Similarly, Azure and UCC are also connected to MPLS, hence they should also be able to communicate to each other in this setup. Actually, it doesn't happen. The reason is, even though legacy Cisco sites and these SD WAN sites are connected to the MPLS infrastructure, this MPLS here is connecting into the transport VR, and the user, or let's say LAN routes, are in the LAN VR. And in case of Versa SD WAN routers, the LAN VR and transport VR don't communicate to each other, means they don't exchange routes with each other. In case of internet underlay, we make a paired TVI to locally break out to internet, but that's not possible in the MPLS underlay, and that configuration don't make much sense as well. So how do we connect the Cisco MPLS, Azure and UCC sites to the SD WAN? We cannot connect them to the transport VR. Of course, we cannot connect them to the control VR. So the only option is left in the LAN VR. We have to find a way to introduce these Cisco MPLS, Azure and UCC routes in the SD WAN fabric, and that's possible with the help of this device called SD WAN Gateway. Now this device is managed by the provider and it's hosted in the provider environment, but when we onboard customer onto this device acts as just another site of a customer. So how does this play out? Let's say we have Azure and UCC and we have Cisco MPLS. If we can find a way to get these routes into the LAN VR of the SD WAN gateway, the LAN VR, if the BGP or static route is allowed in the redistribution policy, it will advertise those routes into the controller via the control VR. Now, controller being a route reflector, it will advertise those Azure and legacy Cisco routes to all the sites. and then the control VR on those sites will give those route to LAN VR. And now all these three sites have the Azure and Legacy Cisco routes in their LAN VR. Now we need the return route as well. So for that, as I said, this SDWAN gateway acts as just another site of a customer that we have onboarded. So when this particular site advertise its LAN routes in the LAN VR, and then they got redistributed to the control VR and get advertised to the controller. Controller, being a route reflector, is going to give these red routes to all the sites, including SDWAN gateway. Once they are in SDWAN gateway control VR of that organization, the control VR will give the route to LAN VR, thus completing the full circle. So this is how the routing is exchanged in case of use case 1, 2, and 3 in SDWAN gateway of Versa routers. In subsequent videos, we will do the configuration and we'll see how it actually works out.